Kyrie eleison.
Hello, and welcome back to the Catholic Workers Podcast. We're happy to have you join us. Today, our discussion will delve deeply into a concept both ancient and profoundly relevant to our contemporary economic realities: the Jubilee Year. This powerful idea of a societal reset grounded in principles of justice and liberation has resonated across millennia from the fields of ancient Israel to the very heart of the Vatican. We have a comprehensive exploration plan for today. Initially, we'll journey back to the ancient Near East to comprehend the foundational practices of a jubilee and analogous debt relief systems. Subsequently, we will trace its compelling history and transformation within the Catholic Church, evolving from a socio-economic imperative to a significant spiritual observance. Finally, we will consider what a modern jubilee might entail as we confront substantial levels of debt in our society, examining current statistics and their implications. Part 1: The Ancient Roots, the Jubilee in Ancient Israel and the Near East. Our narrative commences millennia ago in the ancient Near East, where the concept of a Jubilee first appears in the book of Leviticus, specifically in Leviticus 25. This was more than a religious ritual. It represented a profound socio-economic and religious institution meticulously designed for a complete societal reset. Every 50 years, following 7 cycles of 7-year sabbaticals, a special year was proclaimed. This periodicity was not arbitrary. The number 7 holds deep significance in biblical numerology. The core mandates of the Jubilee were indeed radical for their era. These included the command for the law to lie fallow, with no cultivation permitted. This was not solely for ecological restoration, it was an act of faith and divine provision. Furthermore, Israelites who had entered servitude due to indebtedness were to be liberated and reunited with their families, a potent act of human emancipation. Perhaps the most revolutionary aspect was the mandate for any land sold during periods of economic hardship to revert to its original ancestral families. This prevented people from permanently losing their inherited property, making sure land couldn't be permanently alienated. Leviticus 25, chapter 25, verse 10 famously declares, quote, "Proclaim liberty throughout all the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you," end quote. This verse, significantly inscribed on the Liberty Bell, encapsulates the central themes of freedom and restoration. The Jubilee was ceremonially announced with the blast of a shofar, a ram's horn trumpet, on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, thus directly linking its economic and social dimensions to spiritual purification. The foundational theological principle at play here is critical: God's ultimate ownership of the land. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 23 states, quote, "The land is mine. You are but strangers resident with me," end quote. This implies that the land was not merely an economic asset, but a divine endowment, preventing any Israelite family from permanent dispossession. The Jubilee served as a comprehensive economic, social, and spiritual reset intended to counteract the overconcentration of land and wealth in a few hands, and to alleviate severe hardship for debtors. It constituted a divinely ordained economic policy explicitly designed to prevent wealth accumulation by a select few, a pervasive issue in the ancient world. Notably, Israel was not unique in recognizing the necessity of debt relief. Similar practices are observed in other ancient Near Eastern societies. For instance, in Mesopotamia, kings such as Hammurabi frequently issued remission edicts, or misharim. These royal decrees often proclaimed at the commencement of a king's reign, or as necessity dictated, to provide relief from extreme economic distress and maintain social stability. Such edicts frequently encompassed debt cancellation, tax exemptions, freedom from debt enslavement, and even the nullification of real estate transactions executed to settle debts. Hammurabi, for example, declared 4 general debt cancellations during his 42-year reign. However, these were typically pragmatic political instruments driven by royal prerogative rather than a fixed divine mandate. Egyptian pharaohs also possessed a tradition of debt cancellation, corroborated by the Rosetta Stone. Pharaohs like Ptolemaeus V canceled debts owed to the throne, and Ramses IV and III proclaimed amnesties, including tax arrears and the liberation of political prisoners. And analogous to Mesopotamia, the motivation was often the preservation of a viable peasantry for agricultural production and military service. The primary distinction is that while Mesopotamia and Egypt relied on sporadic royal decrees, the biblical Jubilee was a divinely mandated law with a fixed, cyclical occurrence. This rendered it a predictable, clean slate. Despite its detailed biblical description and profound ideals, direct historical and archaeological evidence for widespread, consistent observance of the Jubilee in ancient Israel remained scarce. Rabbinic interpretation suggests its application was conditional, requiring all 12 tribes to reside in Israel, a condition often unfulfilled after various exiles. Prophetic, prophetic critiques even imply that the failure to observe these cycles contributed to calamities such as the Babylonian exile. This highlights the tension between the utopian ideal and the practical challenges inherent in implementing such radical economic reforms in complex societies. Nevertheless, its enduring moral influence is undeniable, inspiring movements for freedom and economic reform for centuries. Part 2: From Land to Grace, the Jubilee in the Catholic Church. The concept of Jubilee underwent a significant transformation with the advent of Christianity and its subsequent development within the Catholic Church. While deeply rooted in the Old Testament, its practical application evolved from a literal socio-economic reset to a powerful spiritual event. The first Christian Holy Year, which we now term a Jubilee, was formally convoked by Pope Boniface VIII in 1300. This is not a pre planned event, but rather emerged from a spontaneous surge of religious devotion. Thousands of pilgrims flocked to Rome, motivated by a conviction regarding the spiritual significance of the new century and rumors of a widespread remission of sins. Observing these immense crowds, Boniface VIII formalized the concept. He granted the most full pardon of all their sins to those who, being truly penitent and having confessed, visited the basilicas of St. Peter and St. Paul in Rome for a specified period. Interestingly, Boniface did not initially employ the term Jubilee in his official decree. It was contemporary writers who began describing the year as Annus Jubileus, and the designation endured. The motivations for this first Jubilee were both spiritual and pragmatic. The immense influx of pilgrims, estimated at an extraordinary 2 million for that year, yielded substantial economic benefit to the papal treasury. Historical accounts even describe clerks utilizing rakes to collect the ceaseless flow of coins deposited by the faithful outside the basilicas. Prominent figures such as Dante Alighieri, who immortalized the event in his Divine Comedy, were among the pilgrims. From this inaugural Jubilee, the frequency of these holy years began to evolve. Initially, Pope Boniface VIII decreed a Jubilee only once every 100 years. However, this proved too infrequent for many to experience within a single lifetime. In 1343, Pope Clement VI, influenced by figures like Bridget of Sweden, reduced the interval to every 50 years. The Jubilee of 1350 adhered to this new rhythm. Subsequently, in 1383, Pope Urban VI further diminished it to every 33 years, symbolizing the approximate duration of Jesus' earthly life. Finally, in 1470, Pope Paul II decreed that the Jubilee should be celebrated every 25 years. This decision aimed to ensure that each generation would have the opportunity to experience at least one Jubilee, and this 25-year cycle has constituted the normal rule ever since. The Catholic Jubilee, while retaining themes of liberation and restoration, primarily concentrates on spiritual liberation through the forgiveness of sins and the granting of indulgences, rather than literal economic and land reforms. This transformation underscores the Church's ability to adapt ancient principles to new theological and societal understandings, emphasizing spiritual reconciliation and grace as central to its mission. Nevertheless, as Catholic workers, we're prompted to inquire what occurs when spiritual liberation becomes disassociated from the real world conditions that frequently contribute to spiritual oppression. Part 3: A Modern Jubilee: Debt, Dignity, and a Call to Action. We've explored the radical origins of the Jubilee in ancient Israel and its spiritual evolution within the Catholic Church. The pertinent question now becomes, what are the implications for us today in a world grappling with unprecedented levels of debt and economic disparity? In the spirit of Jubilee, this call for a societal reset appears more urgent than ever. The foundational principle of the biblical Jubilee was to prevent the excessive accumulation of land and wealth and to alleviate severe financial hardship. It sought to counteract the natural human propensity towards economic stratification. Frankly, our current economic system appears to foster the inverse. The ideal of Jubilee, despite the historical challenges in its consistent observance, has profoundly inspired movements for freedom and economic reform. It significantly influenced abolitionism, and today it continues to motivate endeavors for land redistribution, fair housing, and crucially, for our discussion, debt relief. Let us examine the current financial landscape as the figures paint a stark picture of the challenges confronting numerous families and individuals. According to recent data from the Federal Reserve, household debt in the U.S. has reached an astonishing $20.3 trillion. This is not merely an abstract figure. It represents mortgages, student loans, auto loans, credit card balances, and home equity lines of credit that impose a substantial burden on millions of American families. The document highlights significant areas of household debt: mortgages and HELOCs. While the core mortgage market appears relatively stable, it's noted that there are rising delinquencies in mortgages and home equity lines of credits, indicating broader financial pressure for many households. Student loans. Student loan debt remains a particularly acute issue. Delinquency rates are rising, reaching levels not observed since 2012. Persistent stress is evident also in auto loan performance, with serious delinquency rates reaching 2.6% in the first quarter, the highest since 2011. Credit card debt, though showing a slight decrease, continues to be a substantial burden, particularly for young borrowers. These trends collectively suggest that a growing segment of the population faces considerable challenges in managing their financial obligations, which impacts consumer spending, investment, and overall economic growth. So, what would a modern Jubilee look like from our Catholic perspective, focusing specifically on debt cancellation? It's not about a simplistic one time declaration, but a fundamental restructuring of our economic system to align with the core principles of the original Jubilee, preventing excessive wealth concentration, ensuring social stability, and restoring economic standing for all. A modern debt cancellation initiative, inspired by Jubilee, could implement a more universalist system of relief, with key components designed to alleviate the burden on all eligible households while particularly benefiting those in the bottom of the economic spectrum. The focus will remain strictly on household debt, deliberately excluding business debts, which represent a distinct category of financial leverage in the economy. Here are some conceptual elements of such a system. Universal student loan relief. All federal student loan debt up to a significant universal threshold, for instance $30,000 per borrower, could be canceled. With approximately 42.7 million federal student loan borrowers and an average undergraduate debt of around $29,300, a universal $30,000 cancellation could collectively amount to an estimated $1.28 trillion in relief. This figure is an upper bound as it assumes every eligible borrower receives the full $30,000 even if their total outstanding debt is less. This approach ensures broad participation and impact without requiring complex income verification, while still disproportionately benefiting those for whom $30,000 represents a large percentage of their total debt or even their entire debt. Broad credit card and auto loan forgiveness. A fixed, universal amount of relief, such as $5,000, could be applied to outstanding credit card balances for all individuals. Given the total outstanding credit card debt of approximately $1.18 trillion, over 631 million credit card accounts, with about 46% of cardholders carrying a balance, a universal $5,000 cancellation per account carrying a balance would in effect cancel most, if not all, the outstanding credit card debt, making the total cost of this measure up to $1.18 trillion. A fixed universal amount of relief, such as $5,000, could also be applied to outstanding auto loan balances. With a total outstanding auto loan debt of approximately $1.64 trillion, a universal $5,000 per loan cancellation would provide significant relief. While a precise total cost depends on the number of individual loans and their balances, such a measure would collectively amount to a substantial portion of this total debt, potentially in the hundreds of billions of dollars, profoundly impacting those with smaller or moderate car loans. Targeted mortgage principal reduction for primary residences. For mortgages, relief would be strictly limited to owner-occupied primary residences. A percentage of the outstanding principal could be universally reduced up to a maximum amount, for instance, $100,000 in principal. With approximately 50.8 million outstanding mortgages, though specific data for only owner-occupied primary residences is not available, this figure provides a broad indication of residential mortgages. A universal principal reduction of up to $100,000 per eligible mortgage could represent a total potential cancellation of up to $5 trillion. The inherent challenges in consistently observing the biblical Jubilee underscores the difficulty in implementing such radical socioeconomic reforms. Yet the unrealistically utopian nature of the Jubilee is precisely what imbues it with its enduring inspirational force. It serves as a potent benchmark for what a truly just and equitable society could be. As Catholic workers, we're summoned to action. We're called to be prophetic, to challenge unjust structures, and to advocate for a world where economic and social well-being are integral components of the covenantal relationship with God. Our faith demands that we integrate spiritual integrity, social equity, and economic stability. A modern Jubilee extends beyond mere debt cancellation. It represents a revolution of values, recognizing that authentic liberation, as proclaimed by Jesus in Luke chapter 4, verses 18 to 19, involves bringing good news to the poor, declaring liberty to captives, and setting the oppressed free. It is a spiritual mission with profound socioeconomic implications. This necessitates advocating for policies that reduce debt burdens, ensure access to housing, promote fair labor practices, and challenge the system that concentrates wealth and power. It demands our commitment to an economy where human dignity, solidarity, and the common good are prioritized above unchecked profit. The Jubilee is more than a historical curiosity or religious observance. It's a timeless call to justice, a profound reminder that our economic systems must serve humanity and not the inverse. It is an invitation to perpetually reset, rebalance, and restore. Before we conclude, we'd be grateful for your support. If you enjoyed listening to this episode of the Catholic Workers Podcast, please consider subscribing to our podcast on your preferred platform. This helps new listeners discover our content. If you have a moment, kindly leave us a rating and a review. Your feedback is invaluable and assists in expanding our reach. And finally, we're a listener-supported podcast. Every contribution aids us in continuing to produce new episodes and spark new conversations. You can find us on Ko-fi, simply search for the Catholic Workers Podcast, or refer to the show notes for a direct link. Your support helps cover our modern production costs and sustains this podcast. Thank you immensely for listening. We invite you to join us next time as we continue to explore how our faith compels us to build a more just and equitable world.
Kyrie